After exchanging souls, Song Guichen found a pretty husband. During the Northern Song Dynasty, the story of happy enemies do Qingshan and Song Guichen eating, drinking, sweet, and flirting keywords of the novel. Qingshan Oath no pop-ups, Qingshan Oath TXT complete collection download, Qingshan Oath latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. The Pure Wilderness. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The pure wilderness. The north wind is raging, grass is breaking and sand is flying. The cold winter has passed, but the weather has not warmed as usual. The sky not far away is still gloomy and gray, constantly howling with wind and snow. The snowy sky quickly covered the vast wilderness, covering the previously visible withering in decay. In the wind and snow, a group of sparse figures that had spread for over a mile slowly moved forward, like black ants in the snow. The days of trekking, combined with hunger and cold, exhausted everyone's last bit of strength, and gradually someone fell. However, few people stopped because of someone else's fall. The crowd walked wearily and like walking corpses, unsure of how far ahead they were or how long they could hold on. Perhaps the next person to fall is oneself. Song Guichen wrapped himself in an ill-fitting silver-red cloak, pursed his thin lips, and silently followed the crowd forward. Beside her, followed by a slightly taller man with a short cotton jacket, who also bit his lower lip tightly, carrying a black iron pot on his back, step by step moving forward. After an unknown amount of time, the man beside him said, "Flip over the mountain in front and you'll see the boundary of Jiangnan Road." Song Guichen fiercely despised the person who said this in his heart. In this snowy wilderness, endless mountains appeared in the vast white distance. Fortunately, he could easily say, "Flip over the mountain ahead." I'm afraid most of the people had already fallen before they reached the mountain. Not to mention crossing that mountain. However, the speaker did not pay attention to Song Guichen's contempt and continued to imagine. I heard that Hangzhou is the first state in the southeast, with a length of 20 miles and a spacious area of 30,000 rooms. When I arrive in Hangzhou, I must first eat 50 pieces of meat patties and drink 30 jars of good wine from it. Last year, areas such as Jingdong, Jingxi, Hebei, Shaanxi, and Huainan were hit by locusts, which covered the sky. Wherever they passed, crops were not harvested. However, the courtiers in the court falsely reported the disaster situation, created a peaceful scene, and even uttered the absurd theory that locusts are not a disaster. The emperor, unaware of the truth, still imposed taxes, making it difficult for the people to survive and causing widespread refugees. These refugees around gathered from disaster-stricken areas such as Kaifeng, intending to travel to Suzhou and Hangzhou. Upon hearing about Hangzhou, Song Guichen reluctantly agreed. Indeed, with 100,000 households in Qiantang, its wealth is comparable to that of the imperial capital Kaifeng, making it a rare place to live in seclusion. The man gave her a strange glance and said, "Hangzhou is wealthy, why has it become a place to live in seclusion? The saying goes, little hidden in the city, big hidden in the court. Hangzhou's prosperity is the first choice for seclusion." "That's as if you've been to Hangzhou," the man muttered softly. "Even though you're just a little girl, what do you mean by living in seclusion at a young age?" Song Guichen didn't answer and kept walking forward in the wind, leaving several people behind and slowly walking to the front of the team. The man who followed beside her unexpectedly caught up with her without falling to the ground. "Hey, you haven't really been to Hangzhou, have you? Hey, do you have no relatives in Kaifeng? Hey, how old are you this year? Have you ever read any books? Hey, I said, it's getting dark soon. We're walking so fast and entering the mountain. If we encounter a fierce beast, it's not a good thing. Shut up." Song Guichen finally spoke up, "With this strength, take good care of yourself. Eat less than half a cake tonight and save me some food." The man remained silent and obediently followed Song Guichen for half a step, no longer speaking. "Just muttering in my heart, eating people with soft mouths and holding people with short hands. Sure enough, I shouldn't have eaten her meat patty back then. However, thinking of the meat patty, he couldn't help but pull the iron pot on his back, looked at his skinny and short companion walking ahead, and swallowed hard. The meat patty she handled tastes really delicious. As soon as Song Guichen thought of his foolish act a month ago and saved the man beside him who was nothing but beautiful, he couldn't help but feel angry. I really wish I could chop off the hand I reached out to him at that time. She still vividly remembers that day, although it was cold, the sun rarely shone. After a day of driving, before the sun had set, she found an empty corner and sat down comfortably. Humming a song, boiling the snow water and steaming the dry pancake, he took out the meat jerky that he had been hiding for a long time. After careful consideration, he broke the already small piece of meat into 2 halves and put half back in his luggage, while the other half was finely torn and sprinkled on the pancake. Smelling the fragrance of meat and cake, Song Guichen was about to take a bite when he suddenly heard a slight movement behind him. Song Guichen turned his head cautiously, only to see a man with a pale face and lifeless eyes lying helplessly in the snow that had not yet melted. His silver-red cloak accentuated his pale face, making him very handsome. As a refugee, Song Guichen had seen so many scenes of starving to death on the roadside. In the first few months, she might have extended a helping hand, but later she became numb. However, perhaps it was the gorgeous cloak under his body at the time that gave her the desire to own it. Or perhaps his lifeless expression touched a chord deep within her. By a stroke of fate, she said to him, I still have a piece of meat cake here. Here it is for you, and the cloak under your body is for me. The man's gaze moved, but he didn't answer. Song Guichen smiled and said, alternatively, I can stay here and take your cloak after you die. Don't worry, I will dig a pit for you and make a grave for you. Before she could finish speaking, the man sat up silently, took off his cloak, threw it over, and lay down expressionless. Song Guichen looked at the cloak in his hand and happily took off his cotton jacket, which was already as cold as an iron block, and covered the man's body. He neatly put on the cloak with his hands and feet. Well, it's a bit long, but it's not a problem. Song Guichen took out half of the meat jerky and a piece of pancake that he had just put back from his luggage, squatted down on the man's side, and stuffed the meat jerky and pancake into his hand. I can only help you so much. If it's fate, I'll see you in Hangzhou, he said. On the journey of famine and escape, even a magnificent cloak cannot satisfy hunger, but a piece of bread can save a person's life. Song Guichen exchanged a piece of bread and half a piece of meat for a cloak, which was already a losing deal. But she didn't expect that the next day she would be entangled by him who was chasing after her, constantly following her, and even taking the initiative to snatch and carry the iron pot that she never left. In theory, the iron pot contained all the rations of Song Guichen. If it had been in the past, she would never have trusted someone who had only seen 2 sides to carry it. But wearing a cloak and carrying another pot is indeed very troublesome, and yesterday this man threw his valuable cloak to himself without saying a word, making Song Guichen's defense against him less heavy. A person who can casually throw everything they own to others, a person who was determined to die yesterday, would not covet such things from her. Right. However, Song Guichen was mistaken. He's just greedy for her food. Song Guichen turned to look at the man who was silent and said, I said, you looked like you had no choice but to die that day. I thought you would definitely throw away my meat cake. The man pursed his lips and said, the hot pancake in his hand is so fragrant that he couldn't help but taste it. Damn it. Song Guichen cursed inwardly. For this reason, she had an extra drag on her luck. In just 1 month, she had eaten up her previous 2 months of food. If she doesn't go to Hangzhou again, she will starve to death on the wasteland. Song Guichen felt angry in his heart, and his footsteps couldn't help but accelerate. He said fiercely, Do Qingshan. If you don't repay me well in the future, I can't spare you. The man behind looked up at her back, using all his strength to lift his foot to keep up with her speed, and smiled silently. Okay, I will definitely repay you in the future. Looking for investment and feedback. This new book was written after careful consideration, and compared to the first one, it took a lot of effort. I will work hard to write it. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. The Sound of Fluttering Song. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. The Sound of Fluttering Song. Even though the two accelerated their speed, they still couldn't cross the mountain range mentioned by Du Qingshan before it got dark. However, the two of them were lucky and found a sheltered cave. Song Guichen started cleaning up the cave diligently and quickly. There was actually a bundle of dry grass that had not been dampened by rain and snow inside, as well as a pile of dry firewood, obviously brought by nearby hunters. Song Guichen couldn't help but smile at the animal footprints he occasionally saw on the snow after entering the mountain, and his hand movements became more decisive. Soon, he lit the firewood. Relying on mountains to eat mountains, relying on water to eat water. Animal footprints on the snow indicate the presence of animals in the mountains. If there are animals, it means there is food in this mountain. It seems that they are right to work tirelessly to accelerate their speed into the mountain. After several months of trekking, the road was filled with mournful birds, not to mention animals. Even the roots and trunks of trees were gnawed bare, with no trace of green. Now that we are approaching the border of Jiangnan, we are gradually becoming more lively. Song Guichen happily took off his obstructive cloak, and the cold wind blew, causing him to shiver uncontrollably. She gasped in her hand, leaned closer to the fire for a moment, then stood up and decided to take advantage of the snow to go out and walk around, try her luck, maybe encounter a wild chicken or rabbit. After looking at Du Qingshan, who had been sitting in a corner leaning against the rock wall since entering the cave, Song Guichen couldn't help but feel his anger. "Hey," I said, "you're a big man, you wouldn't have to wait for me to find food for you, would you?" Du Qingshan opened her eyes and said with a natural expression, "Well, you go today, I'll go tomorrow." A very fair proposal. Song Guichen shrugged his shoulders without refusing. After all, since they finished their dry food, most of the time he went to find something to eat, although it was often just a few bitter wild vegetables. She went foraging once today, and there was nothing wrong with it. With this in mind, Song Guichen took out a curved knife from his backpack, walked out of the cave, and deliberately pulled a cluster of thorny trees outside the cave to block the entrance. This is not about those who are worried about the wind blowing in and into the hole, but about the land she has finally cleared up, which cannot be discovered by others. After sealing the cave entrance tightly, Song Guichen walked into the vast white forest with satisfaction, humming a song. In the 3 alleys of the Jade Dragon, the sound is shaking, and the branches are moonlit. Amidst the quiet night and snow, the ethereal singing is finely broken. Fortunately, at this moment, there was no one else in the forest. Otherwise, I would have been frightened and fainted by this eerie scene. Song Guichen walked and looked around. When she was young, she followed her master to seclusion in the isolated mountains of West Lake. She was already familiar with hunting, and as long as there was prey, she could even keep it in her bag with her eyes closed. Thinking of his master, Song Guichen's singing suddenly came to an end. Half a year ago, when she woke up, she found herself wearing into the body of this thin and small orphan girl. What's even more bizarre is that the place where she woke up was in a chaotic grave next to Kaifeng Prefecture, 2,000 miles away from Gushan in Hangzhou. The original owner of this body is probably an unwanted orphan, who died and was casually thrown onto a grave. Song Guichen lived for 20 years in his past life, and this is the first time he has encountered such a strange thing. After the initial shock and panic, she decided to go back to Hangzhou to figure out the situation. Goo-goo, goo-goo. The sound of wild pheasants pulled Song Guichen's thoughts back. Listening attentively, I determined the position of the pheasant and the curved knife in my hand flew out. After a rapid cluck cry, there was only a dull thumping sound left. I've been on the road all day and I've been starving so much that my chest is pressing against my back. At this moment, holding the still warm mountain chicken in his hand, Song Guichen was so happy that he forgot all his worries and continued to hum a song as he walked back, thinking that he would be able to eat the hot chicken later. Returning to the cave, the fire had already burned out, and the cold air in the pitch-black cave was overwhelming. Song Guichen's heart was filled with anger. Qingshan was here, and she had to work hard to go hunting. While she was in the cave, she didn't even know how to add firewood. Throwing the pheasant towards the burnt fire, Song Guichen felt as if he had reached his luggage in the dark, lit the remaining flame, and approached Qingshan, patting his cheek. "Hey, won't it freeze to death?" Qingshan opened her eyes, her black and white eyes reflecting the sparkling flames, which were somewhat stunning. However, Song Guichen had no intention of indulging in beauty, as she was startled by Qingshan's scorching forehead and said, "Oh my God, you have a fever at this time and you want to die." She anxiously looked around, and Qingshan weakly said, "There's no need to look, we don't have medicine. I know I'm sick without you. I didn't get sick on my own initiative." Seeing him burning like this, Song Guichen still had the strength to argue with him. He was too lazy to pay attention to him and took the cloak spread on the other side of the hay to cover him, saying, "Don't you know how to find something to keep warm even when it's cold?" "Oh," Qingshan leaned weakly against the stone wall, pulling out a teasing smile. "I didn't notice that you deliberately left your cloak for me. You thought too much, I just thought it was troublesome and didn't wear it out." Song Guichen took all the hay from the cave and placed it under Qingshan. "You lie down first, I'll start the firewood. Let's have roasted pheasant tonight. If you want to eat meat, don't fall asleep. Got it?" Although Song Guichen knew a few herbs, it was not realistic to go and collect them at this time when the night was dark and the wind was high. She also knew that a large part of Qingshan's fever was caused by hunger. Yesterday, he left his only pancake for himself, and this morning, the two of them only had enough soup. She quickly burned a pile of fire and dealt with the still panting pheasant. Not long after, Qingshan vaguely heard the sound of oil sizzling, smelled the aroma of meat, and even the tingling of Sichuan pepper. But his eyelids were so heavy that he couldn't open them, so he reluctantly sighed in his heart. Little Chen's roasted mountain chicken, just thinking about it, was just a delicious dish in the world. Unfortunately, to roll up the pearl curtain for a clear appreciation, don't sweep it, the snow in front of the steps. Beyond the fragrance of meat and oil, a soft singing voice hummed a tune that had never been heard before. This piece of music is unique and the lyrics are written elegantly. Qingshan has never heard Song Guichen sing it before. He forcefully opened his eyes and saw a dirty girl sitting in the flames, with messy hair that was not even as long as his. At this moment, she was humming a song and focusing on grilling a gilded pheasant. Did her mood improve because she was about to arrive in Hangzhou? Before Qingshan could figure it out, Song Guichen had already walked over and evenly divided the roasted pheasant into two halves, handing him half. "Let's eat, we don't have to worry about it today. I just noticed that there's plenty of food to eat in the mountains." Seeing Qingshan smiling but not reaching out to take it, Song Guichen's heart sank. Patiently sat down and placed the chicken legs on Qingshan's lips. "I said, we are just one step away from Hangzhou. If you fall at this moment, wouldn't it be a huge loss?" Qingshan took a bite, and in an instant, his lips and teeth were enveloped in the fragrance of meat for a long time. The delicious taste immediately pressed against his internal organs, and the numbness of Sichuan pepper made him feel like he was in the clouds. Two of them took one bite at a time, and soon a mountain chicken was completely eaten by the two. With something in their stomachs, Song Guichen contentedly leaned against the stone wall with Qingshan, patting their stomachs as they watched the still burning fire. "What tune did you hum just now?" Qingshan was not as weak and powerless as before, and asked Song Guichen without any words. Just that, don't sweep, snow in front of the steps." "Oh, that's the word my master filled in. To roll up the pearl curtain for a clear appreciation, don't sweep away the snow in front of the steps." It is a poem written by the reclusive poet Lin Bu of the Northern Song Dynasty. After the age of 40, this person lived in seclusion in the isolated mountains of West Lake and did not venture into the city for 20 years. He is a true hermit, no less than Tao Yuanming of the Eastern Jin Dynasty. After his death, his tomb was located on the isolated mountain of West Lake. Tomb robbers came to rob the tomb, but only found an inkstone and a jade hairpin in the tomb. Inkstone is a commonly used item among scholars, and it is reasonable to use it as a burial companion. But what about that jade hairpin? What is the story behind it? End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Disqualified Tone. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Disqualified Tone. Your master. Du Qingshan scrutinized Song Guichen seriously. She was only 14 or 15 years old and not exceptionally beautiful. Perhaps due to malnutrition since childhood, her whole face was yellow, thin, and dry. In Du Qingshan's view, a person who is so ordinary that there is no sense of existence when placed in a crowd, is not even noticeable. However, from her clear and snowy gaze, Du Qingshan always felt that she was not as ordinary as she appeared on the surface. Over the past month, her behavior and demeanor, her culinary skills that turned decay into magic, and her determination to go to Hangzhou have all shown Du Qingshan characteristics that are different from ordinary girls aged 14 or 15. Although somewhat awkward, Du Qingshan had to admit that in the past month, he had been taken care of by this younger girl quite a bit. Du Qingshan couldn't help but laugh and said, "I can't believe you still have a master." Song Guichen glanced at Du Qingshan and said, "What's wrong? If you're not good looking, you can't have a master." She knew that this body was indeed very ordinary compared to her original appearance. Especially in front of Du Qingshan, who was as bright as the moon, she was like a girl carrying water and burning firewood in the countryside. Du Qingshan quickly explained, "I didn't mean that. I was just curious about what kind of person could write such beautiful sentences." Song Guichen loves to hear this. The person she admired the most since childhood was her master Lin Bu. When she heard others praise her master, she was even happier than when she heard others praise her. Lin Bu is aloof and self-centered, proficient in almost every aspect of poetry, song and prose, calligraphy and painting. He just wrote poetry at will, often throwing it away and never retaining it. As his only disciple, Song Guichen sympathized with the abandonment of those exquisite poems. Therefore, for so many years, she secretly recorded all the poems he wrote, and in her leisure time, she would compose a song and sing it. Upon hearing Du Qingshan's praise, Song Guichen and Yu Rongyan happily said, "My master is the lonely mountain of West Lake." Halfway through, Song Guichen suddenly fell silent. Master's fame is so great that no one in the entire Song dynasty who has a slight background may not know. Although Du Qingshan followed her all the way to escape, judging from his attire and behavior, he must also be a young master from a wealthy family, and there is a high possibility of knowing his master. If he were to rashly claim to be Lin Bu's apprentice in his current state, he would have laughed to death. Who is it? Du Qingshan thought that Song Guichen deliberately didn't say anything, which was to arouse his curiosity and provoke him to ask further questions. However, he was indeed curious, so he asked with great respect. Song Guichen tilted his head and stared at him for a while, then shrugged and said, "Hey, forget it. Anyway, you don't know what you said." "How do you know I don't know if you don't say it?" Song Guichen threw the last piece of wood into the dying fire and rubbed his cold hands. Du Qingshan saw her cold and took off his cloak, handing it to her. Song Guichen hesitated for a moment, leaned towards Du Qingshan, and draped his cloak over the two of them. She doesn't want to suffer from the cold for the sake of rules that cannot keep warm or be eaten as a meal. "If your fever doesn't subside tonight, we won't be able to catch up tomorrow, so we'll split your cloak in half." "Thank you very much," Du Qingshan said insincerely and relentlessly. "Who is your master?" Song Guichen said, "My master is the renowned heavenly sword master in the martial arts world. Long Outyin." "Who is Long Outyin? I have never heard of such a person in the martial arts world." "This is you ignorant and ignorant, can you blame me?" After careful consideration for a while, Qingshan spoke up and said, "I have heard of the lonely mountain of West Lake. As a heavenly sword master, I suspect you are trying to scare me." Song Guichen hesitated and asked, "Are you from Song? You haven't even heard of Long Outyin." Seeing Song Guichen's disdainful expression, as if unaware that Long Outyin was not worthy of being a Song person, Qingshan began to doubt whether he was truly ignorant. He sincerely asked, "Who is Long Outyin?" "Long Outyin, I fabricated it and lied to you." "You." Seeing Qingshan feeling exhausted, Song Guichen hummed happily and quickly loosened the hay on the ground. He lay down and said, "Sleep. When the fire goes out, it gets even colder." As she spoke, she squeezed towards Qingshan and consciously pulled her cloak towards her side. She has been monopolizing the cloak these days, but today Qingshan had a fever, so she kindly gave him some of the cloak. They have no medicinal herbs, and when they get sick and have a fever in such a snowy mountain, they are simply the number one enemy. Therefore, Song Guichen squeezed beside Qingshan without any concern and calmly explained. "In the current situation, we don't have any medicine. You are already sick. If I get sick again, no one will find us something to eat. We will have to endure a night of squeezing together. I don't think you're taking advantage of me." Qingshan lowered her head, sniffing the strange smell emanating from Song Guichen's body, and forgot about the things she had played with. She couldn't help but pinch her nose in disgust. "Are you really a woman? Your grandfather?" Song Guichen extended his foot and kicked Qingshan, "Little bastard, of course I am a woman." Being called Little Wang Ba Lao Zi by a young girl made Qingshan's awkward emotions even more intense. "In the past month, I have become accustomed to her language and behavior, but this is the first time I have been so angry and scolded by her. I said, which woman in Kaifeng Prefecture is like you, with rude language and indecent behavior? You shut up." Song Guichen rudely kicked him again. Fortunately, his cloak was wide, and Song Guichen kicked him back, but he didn't intentionally kick him out. The two curled up and squeezed together, able to withstand the piercing coldness that hit the entrance of the cave. Perhaps too tired, Song Guichen quickly fell asleep and didn't forget to continue kicking Qingshan in his sleep. Qingshan helplessly turned her back to her, staring at the pile of firewood with an unclear expression in her eyes. Feeling the even breathing of the person behind him, his mind was filled with more and more questions, and the words, West Lake and Lonely Mountain, lingered in his mind. A 14 or 15-year-old girl from Kaifeng, penniless and impoverished, said to have no father or mother, but has a master. Listening to her proud words that she blurted out but didn't finish, the master she spoke of was undoubtedly in Hangzhou. Has she ever been to Hangzhou? Or did you get lost with your master and go to Hangzhou to find your master? Or it could be the little girl showing off her mentality. Well, after spending this time together, Qingshan confirmed that she is not the kind of little girl who likes to show off. That means there really is a master. Why did she stop talking halfway through? Are you afraid of exposing your master's identity? For the first time, Qingshan found it quite interesting that there was such a confusing thing about herself. The fire burned out, and the last trace of red gradually extinguished. Qingshan rolled over and frowned, muttering, "As a woman, the smell on her body is so unpleasant, it's really out of style." However, this is also something that cannot be done. Upon smelling it on Qingshan, she didn't feel much better. He couldn't help but frown more disdainfully. "When I arrive in Hangzhou, the first thing I do is to burn incense and take a bath." End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Separation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Separation. The next day, Song Guichen slept until dawn. The cloak completely covered his body, but Du Qingshan was nowhere to be seen. Even her pot is gone. The alarm sounded in his heart, and Song Guichen quickly put on his cloak and went out of the cave. He saw Du Qingshan burning a fire and filling her iron pot with a pot of melted and steaming snow water, preparing to kill a mountain chicken. Song Guichen immediately regained his composure and rushed to the side of Du Qingshan. "Did you catch it?" "Nonsense, it's not who I am." Du Qingshan answered as if he were mentally disabled, without even looking at Song Guichen. He only focused on handling the pheasant in his hand. The mountain chicken is agile and can catch it. It seems there are a few brushes, and Song Guichen couldn't help but look up at Du Qingshan a few times. However, Du Qingshan was obviously a novice in dealing with the pheasant. He grabbed the pheasant's neck with one hand and poked it with a sharp stone with the other. After so long, the pheasant's neck was already blurry with blood and flesh, but it was still fiercely thrusting left and right in his hand. "Tsk tsk tsk." Song Guichen stood beside him with his hands down as if watching a play. "It's too cruel. Can you give it a good time? Where's your machete?" Song Guichen took out the machete from his arms that had killed chickens yesterday and gave it to him. Du Qingshan coldly said, "Don't forget to hide the knife in your arms while sleeping. Are you afraid of people's misfortune?" "That's not it. Anyway, I'm also a weak woman. It also depends on whether you have any color that can be robbed." "Why not?" On this escape route, almost all of them were men. As a woman, although I was a bit thin, I had everything I should have. If I were to take care of them someday, I might also be a beauty. Ignoring Song Guichen's shameless boasting, Du Qingshan wielded a knife and cut off the neck of the pheasant. In an instant, the headless pheasant pounced twice before dying. Song Guichen had an illusion that what he was chopping was his own, and couldn't help but shrink his neck. She eagerly took the dead pheasant, scalded it in hot water, and quickly plucked its feathers. "How about we make a pot of chicken soup today?" she said. "Of course, it is Song Guichen who has the final say in cooking." Du Qingshan nodded and added a few sticks of firewood to the fire. Song Guichen only then noticed that there was a pile of new firewood piled up next to him. "You've been quite busy this morning, haven't you? Did your fever subside?" Du Qingshan has long been accustomed to her deceitful words. Although she cares about herself, she must ask with an indifferent attitude that is irrelevant. "Thanks to the blessing of your cloak last night, the fever has subsided." "Oh." At this moment, Song Guichen had deftly cut and washed the mountain chicken, boiled half of the water again, and put the chicken into the pot. The two of them stood earnestly in front of the pot, staring at the fire. Before long, the delicious aroma of chicken came from the pot. Without salt or any seasoning, the cooked food naturally lacks the tempting aroma of baking. Last night, Song Guichen still had a few Sichuan peppercorns on his body, but all of them were used on the chicken from last night. However, for someone who hasn't had a full meal for 2 months, this fragrance is already enough to make people salivate. The two of them scooped out the chicken from the iron pot, and after a whirlwind, there was not even a drop of soup left in the pot. "Last night I roasted mountain chicken, today I cooked chicken soup. I really don't want to be too happy these days." Du Qingshan felt happy and squinted at the sun in the sky. The sun has come out. Compared to the days before when he was full and hungry, Du Qingshan felt that the current life was simply something that only immortals could live on. "Hey, I've always been curious. Are you a girl who used to cook over a fire? You've been carrying this pot all the time, like a baby. Can you enjoy the hot chicken soup without this pot? Then you are really a clever little ghost. You have excellent skills in preparing for the unexpected." Song Guichen remained silent, realizing that she had inexplicably woken up at the chaotic grave post in Kaifeng and had entered this body. She had been preparing to go to Hangzhou. She put in a lot of effort for this. The matter of soul crossing, which she had only read in her notebook, actually appeared on herself. Since she came into this body, what about her original body? Is it occupied by the original owner of this body? If one's own body is also occupied, will the master realize that she is no longer her? The only person Song Guichen cares about in this world is his master. If he hadn't stayed overnight with his master in anger, such a strange thing wouldn't have happened. Hey, what are you thinking? Du Qingshan interrupted Song Guichen's thoughts. Eat and drink enough, it's time for us to go. Departure, 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 departure. You don't need to use so many words, but rather use on the road. You have a heart for it. I didn't think so much, you were too sensitive, right? You can do it. Amidst the commotion, the two of them tidied up and put the remaining firewood into the cave. They carried the pot and their dry luggage on their backs and continued on to Hangzhou. The southeast of Shenzhou boasts stunning scenery. As we move further southeast, the white snow in the mountains disappears more and more, replaced by towering green mountains and trees that stretch endlessly. The streams in the mountains murmur, and the sound of bamboo bells is heard endlessly. Upon hearing the familiar sound of the bell, Song Guichen knew that the main city of Hangzhou was approaching Qi. Since the southern and northern dynasties, Buddhism has flourished, and many emperors advocated Buddhism and built temples and towers. The trend of their empresses and princesses building temples and towers was particularly strong, so there were numerous temples in the southern dynasties. Tang dynasty poet Du Mu once exclaimed, 480 temples in the southern dynasty, amidst countless towers and misty rain. Up to now, there are still many hidden temples in the mountains and forests of Mingchuan in the southeast region. The melodious sound of the bell has been heard by Song Guichen for 10 years. When she was young, she followed her master to roam the Jianghuai region. At the age of 10, she lived in seclusion with her master in the isolated mountains of West Lake and listened to the sound of the bell in the isolated mountain Zen temple for 10 years. At this moment, when he heard the sound of bells coming from the mountains, Song Guichen looked up and searched, hidden among the green mountains, revealing the corners of the temple eaves. Song Guichen couldn't help but chant, "The tower is cold and clusters of clouds and lotuses outside, and the bell chimes are clear and striking between the water and stones. Is this what your master did again? Not bad." Song Guichen was in a good mood and said a few more words to Du Qingshan. "When I was young, I traveled with my master to the Jianghuai River and passed by the Shuzhou Valley Temple. My master wrote this poem." As she spoke, she recited the entire poem and sighed lightly. At that time, I was still young and did not know the artistic conception in the poem. Today, when I saw this ancient temple in the deep mountains, I knew my master's reclusive heart. It seems that your master is truly an extraordinary person. Song Guichen smiled and said, "But master often says that he is just a common person in the common world. Since ancient times, true hermits and hermits have never claimed to have unique characters." Song Guichen shamelessly accepted Du Qingshan's praise of his master and pointed to the densely packed urban area below the mountain, saying, after going down the mountain, "It's Hangzhou. Do you have a place to go in Hangzhou?" After spending more than a month together, she also knew that Du Qingshan was not an ordinary person, and he did not come to Hangzhou for refuge. However, Song Guichen was determined to return to the lone mountain in order to understand the passage of his soul, so he had no intention of curious about other people's affairs. By asking this question, it's just because he's been hunting and carrying the blame these days, showing concern and concern. Du Qingshan said, "If I don't have a place to go, will you take me in?" "Of course not." Song Guichen didn't even think about it and refused directly. "You've been eating and drinking with me for over a month, and you still want to stay. You're really thinking too well. Sigh, then I'm really pitiful. I'll be alone again, with no place to go." Song Guichen naturally wouldn't be softened by his pitiful behavior. When he entered the city, he snatched his luggage, bid farewell to Du Qingshan, and said casually, "Let's say goodbye." "Goodbye, goodbye, never again." "Ah." Du Qingshan looked at her disappearing figure in shock, as if afraid of catching up with her. Helpless, he had to wave his hand and shout loudly. We'll see each other again. The adorable male and female leads will be separated for a while and will soon meet again. Please leave a comment. Also, investment. Recommended tickets. Hehe, end of this chapter. Chapter 5. Soul Exchange. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 6. Fake True Time. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Fake True Time. After saying these words, Song Guichen smiled and looked at the woman in green. Auntie, I am at least someone who has truly lived for 20 years. Will I still be blocked by a little girl like you? However, seeing the other person wearing his own skin and eager to drip, Song Guichen's goosebumps fell to the ground. She would never show such a delicate posture. Looking at Lin Bu, he seemed to have become accustomed to it. Song Guichen couldn't help but have deeper doubts. For the past 7 or 8 months, my body has not been myself. My master has always been careful, but has he not noticed it? Just now, when it comes to this tea, my own cooking skills are even better than cooking, and I would never have brewed such a delicious tea. Master obviously tasted it differently, but why didn't I feel any strange at all? Song Guichen didn't believe that when a 14-year-old girl entered her body, it would be the same as her usual habits. Just now, when I entered the house myself, the white crane in the courtyard was actually locked in a cage and placed in the corner of the courtyard. Master knows that he loves the white crane the most and is determined not to lock it in a narrow cage. Song Guichen didn't believe that his master, who had always cared about him, would have noticed these anomalies. I heard that the gentleman loves 2 things the most, one is plum and the other is crane. Seeing them today seems like there is a rumor wrong. Oh. How could the rumors be mistaken? Mr. Shimei is in line with rumors. It can be said that his love for cranes is not as good as it is, Song Guichen said slowly. My master once told me that among all birds, only cranes are beautiful and elegant. The Book of Songs says, cranes crow at 9 heights, and their voices are heard in the sky. Therefore, my master also loves cranes, but my master's love for cranes is different from his love for cranes. Lin Bu became enthusiastic and said, how can we have a different approach? My master often said that throughout history, many crane lovers have actually harmed cranes, harming their nature and claiming to be pure and comfortable. Locking cranes in cages is a false love for cranes. Therefore, master raises cranes and never locks them in cages. Instead, he says, wild cranes have no food and the world is wide. Only then can he enjoy the pleasure and tranquility of raising cranes. Okay. Lin Bu was overjoyed and said 3 good words in a row. What a wild crane without food, the world is wide. The teacher of the little friend is really Lin Bu's confidant. I don't know where the little friend's master is today. Lin Bu wants to come and visit. Song Guichen felt dejected and thought to himself, far away in the sky, close in front of me, my master is you. She couldn't say this sentence yet, only sighed with regret. Master, he roams the Jianghuai River and his whereabouts are uncertain. I still haven't been able to find him. So, it's really a big regret. Judging from the appearance of the master, it seems that he also truly loves cranes, Song Guichen probed. Just now, I saw 2 white cranes crowded in a narrow cage in the courtyard. I don't think it was the master's wish, did it? Lin Bu said, little friend, I don't know that those 2 cranes were originally kept free in the yard. However, 6 months ago, the 2 cranes suddenly became fierce and injured me. To prevent this from happening, I asked me to lock them up. Song Guichen felt a pain in his heart. At this moment, his master was still defending his disciple. At the same time, she also received a huge piece of information from Lin Bu's words, which was that half a year ago, two obedient white cranes in front of her suddenly injured their souls and penetrated into Duan Xiaoqin's body. Does this mean that the two cranes are telepathic and feel that the souls in their original bodies are no longer themselves? At this point, Song Guichen had no choice but to believe in the bizarre matter of soul exchange. She spoke up and said, "When I was by my master's side, I was influenced by him and also loved cranes. Seeing those two white cranes with gloomy expressions, I couldn't bear it. Sir, could you let me take a closer look?" "Why not?" Lin Bu said quickly, "It's just that two cranes recognize each other. You should be careful, little friend." During their conversation, the three of them arrived at the courtyard. Song Guichen walked up to the wooden cage, squatted down, and opened it. The white crane in the cage immediately came out and happily sang to Song Guichen's side, spinning around. Song Guichen was so moved that he was about to cry. He hadn't seen her for over half a year, but when he returned with a different body, these two cranes could still remember her. Lin Bu was also greatly surprised. These two cranes used to never easily approach anyone except for themselves and Xiaoqin. What's going on today? Ah, these two cranes do indeed know people who love cranes. Miss Duan loves cranes, and cranes also like to approach girls. Fake Song Guichen approached and calmly touched the head of one crane, immediately retracting his hand. "It's all my fault. I woke up 6 months ago and can't remember the past." "I see." Song Guichen couldn't help but admire this segment of Xiaoqin. At a young age, she was so good at lying that even her master was deceived by her. Just, fake is fake. If she can be deceived for a while, can she still be deceived for a lifetime? Song Guichen said to the fake Song Guichen, "Miss Chen, the crane is a spiritual object. You can distinguish whether you treat it truly or falsely. As the ancient said, true cannot be false, false cannot be true. Miss Chen, don't forget about it in the future." Song Guichen wore a thin and small doll face, but said such mature and meaningful words. Fake Xiaoqin, who knew the truth, was shocked and turned pale. Her lips trembled slightly, but she didn't say a word. Lin Bu, who was standing beside her, didn't know what it meant. He only felt that Song Guichen, despite his young age, had profound and wise thoughts, and was a rare young talent. Therefore, Lin Bu even more wanted to meet the master she was talking about. However, this yellow-skinned little girl gave him a very friendly feeling, as if she were his disciple. Lin Bu dismissed this absurd idea from his mind. He came from Kaifeng Prefecture, the imperial capital, and he himself was only a disciple of Xiaoqin. How could he have such an idea? At this moment, Song Guichen solemnly clasped his fists and bowed to Lin Bu, saying, "I've been bothering you for a while, sir. It's getting late, so I'll go back and visit you again another day." "Okay," Lin Bu said, "someday when you find your master, you must remember to introduce yourself to me." "Definitely." Descending the lonely mountain and walking on the bustling streets, Song Guichen felt very uncomfortable in his heart. Identity has been occupied, although I have also occupied the other person's body. It is obvious that the real Duan Xiaoqin does not want to exchange it. Even if she wants to change her identity, how to do so is still a big problem. Song Guichen felt that this matter was too tricky. But the most important thing now is that she has become homeless, and the 2 taels of silver she spent selling her cloak have already cost several hundred won. Moreover, with an unattractive face, even if she were to sell herself, she probably wouldn't be worth much money. Song Guichen lowered his head and looked at his current face by the water. Du Qingshan is right, this body doesn't even have the capital to make people look despicable. This wave of operation has caused me great losses. This segment of Xiaoqin, an unwanted little beggar, was thrown into a chaotic grave. Now she has entered her own body, eating and drinking, and has a master. It is understandable that she is unwilling to exchange it. But Song Guichen let out a mournful cry, and he had no obligation to pity her. Although he didn't originally look like a stunning beauty, at least he was also a beautiful young girl. At the age of 20, the master was determined to marry Song Guichen to Gu Yi, the son of the Gu family in Wujuan. Unfortunately, Song Guichen had already become interested and had some conflicts with his master. On the day of soul piercing, it is also the day of discussing marriage with the Gu family. Song Guichen felt angry in his heart and went down the mountain to the towering Cuilou. After drinking a few more glasses of wine, he woke up and entered his current body, appearing thousands of miles away in Kaifeng Prefecture. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Entering the towering Cuilou. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Entering the towering Cuilou. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have gone to the Cuilou Tower to drink any wine that day. Song Guichen regretted his past and pounded the handrail on the stone by the lake non-stop. Miss, don't take it too hard. A man in his 30s and 40s walked over. People live in heaven and earth. What can't be solved? Miss, at such a young age, why seek death? Ah! Brother Han. Upon seeing the visitor, Song Guichen blurted out his words and secretly regretted it, unable to help his forehead. She recognized someone, and the man was the one who purchased Han Song from the Tower of Chui. She had entrusted him with his blessings and was eating and drinking in the Tower of Chui. Seeing Song Guichen affectionately calling himself Brother Han, Han Song was very surprised and said, "Have we met before?" "Ah, yes, yes." Song Guichen laughed heartily. Brother Han is a righteous and generous person. He helped me pay for medicine a few years ago, and his great kindness is unforgettable. Today, when I saw my benefactor again, I couldn't help but feel a bit impolite. I see. Han Song had no recollection of ever helping such a skinny little girl with a yellow face, just paying for medicine. It was just a casual effort, maybe he had forgotten, so he didn't mind anymore and said, "I saw you staring at the lake all along, worried that you wouldn't be able to take it easy, so I came over to take a look. But what difficulties have you encountered?" "This." Song Guichen's eyes lit up and he grabbed Han Song's sleeve. "Brother Han is purchasing from the Tower of Chui, right? Can you let me work as a cook at the Tower of Chui? Well, it's also good to be a servant, not to boast. The food I make is delicious, Brother Han." By a stroke of fate, Han Song truly agreed to Song Guichen's unreasonable request. Taking Song Guichen to the towering green tower, Han Song said, "By the way, I don't know your name yet." As Song Guichen was about to blurt it out, he immediately realized that he knew his true self, and the name Song Guichen could no longer be used. He said, "I have no father or mother, and I don't know my surname. Brother Han, please call me Xiaochen." Han Song couldn't help but feel a sense of pity again. "Okay, Xiaochen, the kitchen maid at the Cuilou Tower earns 8 taels of silver per month, and the assistant chef earns 4 taels. Now that you're new, you can only start with the assistant chef first." It's possible." Song Guichen nodded eagerly. "If you don't have a place to go, you can stay in the dormitory provided by the tower for the workers, but you will have to deduct 500 yuan per month from the accommodation fee." "No problem at all." For Song Guichen now, as long as there is a place she can go, she would be grateful, not picky about anything else. Moreover, as the most famous restaurant in Hangzhou, the salary offered by Shua Chui Lu is much more generous than elsewhere. She was grateful for Han Song's help, as she effortlessly obtained such conditions that others couldn't even enter. Looking up and down at Song Guichen, Han Song threw a silver bag at him and said, "The color of your clothes is too dull. Use this silver to buy some clothes of your age. Don't rush to work these days, eat more to nourish your body. Being a cook is not good for being so thin and weak." Song Guichen was about to burst into tears, and Brother Han was simply the best person in the world. She used to often come to Cuilou, and naturally knew that Cuilou was an official tavern. From the head of the tavern to the servants, the requirements for everyone were very high. Not to mention the cook, even the bartender in the store must be a handsome and eloquent young man. For a restaurant, although it is selling alcohol, it ultimately relies on delicious dishes to attract diners, so a good cook is particularly important. Her current identity is just an orphan from another city, and her appearance is not good. It is a great kindness to purchase Han Song to let her, the little girl she met for the first time, enter the kitchen. At present, Song Guichen no longer declined and took the silver bag, thankfully saying, "Thank you very much, Brother Han. After I receive the monthly payment, I will definitely return the money for buying clothes to Brother Han." Han Song casually waved his hand and said, "Since you call me Big Brother, you can use this silver with peace of mind." As he spoke, he summoned a bartender and instructed him to take Song Guichen to the servant's residence. "I have something else to do. This is bartender Zhou Qiang. If you have anything in the future, feel free to contact him." Coincidentally, this bartender Song Guichen also knows him. Half a year ago, he came to the Cuilou Tower to drink in anger, and it was him who received him. "Hello Brother Zhou, my name is Xiaochen. Thank you for taking care of me." Although Zhou Qiang is a man, her lips are red and her teeth are white, but she is only 20.4 or 5 years old. Knowing that Han Kai-ban was going to take in this homeless little girl, he couldn't help but marvel at Han Song's kindness. As he walked, he said to Song Guichen, "Little girl, you've really met a good person. Han Kai-ban's reputation for kindness is well known in Hangzhou." "Yeah." Song Guichen was also deeply moved. Unexpectedly, she went through countless hardships from Kaifeng to Hangzhou, but instead of returning to her master's side, she became the assistant chef of the towering Cuilou. "By the way, Brother Zhou, I'm asking you about someone." "Who?" "Have you ever seen the hermit on the isolated mountain of West Lake?" "Lin Bu, Brother Zhou." Song Guichen originally wanted to directly inquire about the fake Song Guichen, but after all, his master's reputation is well known, so inquiring about the other side is not surprising. If you inquire about an unknown woman, the other party is likely to be wary. Sure enough, when Song Guichen heard that the person he wanted to inquire about was Lin Bu, Zhou Qiang smiled and said, "So you're asking about Mr. Lin." This Mr. Lin, who lived in a solitary mountain 10 years ago, has never set foot in the city area. Not to mention me, a few days ago, the new Governor Wang from Kaifeng wanted to meet him, but he was rejected. "Mr. Wang?" "Which Mr. Wang?" Zhou Qiang lowered her voice and said, "You're young, I'm afraid you don't know yet. It's that Gal Xiang Wang Qinruo." Song Guichen couldn't help but oh. The current Prime Minister Wang Qinruo and Song Guichen naturally knew about it. Over the years, it was this Prime Minister who carried out absurd and superstitious activities to cater to the Emperor's wishes. Wang Qinruo is a treacherous person who is good at stirring up discord. In earlier years, he vigorously instigated the relationship between Emperor Zhenzong of Song and Ko Zhuan, accusing the alliance of Chanyuan as an alliance under the city and causing Ko Zhuan to overthrow him. Later, he forged a heavenly script and asked the emperor to offer sacrifices to Mount Taishan Mountain, and built a palace on Mount Taishan Mountain. It cost the people money, and he also made a lot of money from it. On the way from Kaifeng to Hangzhou, Song Guichen also heard a lot of people's resentment and hatred towards Wang Qinruo. The locust plague among the people was so severe that there was no harvest at all. The court officials led by Wang Qinruo even advised the emperor, falsely claiming that locusts died when holding grass, which was a sign of auspiciousness and represented the peaceful and prosperous era of the Great Song Dynasty, reopening the days of Yao and Shun. He completely disregarded the life and death of the people, and even played with the officials like children. Master is the most shameless and naturally unwilling to associate with such a petty and treacherous person. Refusing to do so is already a great way to save his face. "Brother Zhou, how could this Prime Minister have come to Hangzhou? You don't know. Under the direct advice of Prime Minister Wang Dan, the officials learned about the serious disaster situation among the people and were very dissatisfied with Wang Qinrua and others' bullying of the emperor, so they demoted him to Hangzhou. Song Guichen is amazed. This is not derogatory. Hangzhou is prosperous, and Wang Qinrua has made such a big mistake. The official family has only demoted him to the position of Hangzhou official, which is enough to show the official family's respect for him. I'm afraid it won't be long before he returns to Kaifeng and pays his respects again. Upon hearing Song Guichen say these words, Zhou Qiang couldn't help but glance at Song Guichen twice. Obviously, it was unexpected that Song Guichen, despite his young age and unremarkable appearance, was a woman with such insight. The second historical figure appeared. Wang Qinrua, minister of the Northern Song Dynasty, Emperor Zhenzong of Song, and Emperor Renzong of Song, who served as prime minister twice and was one of the 5 ghosts. It was this person who, in order to meet the needs of the immortal sect of Zhenzong in the Song Dynasty, forged the heavenly book, promoted Zhenzong to become a Buddhist monk in Mount Taishan, and staged a farce in which the monarch and his subjects performed together. And this person is treacherous, committing all kinds of evil. I am best at framing loyalty, taking shortcuts, stirring up discord, and blaming others. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Sidekicks. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Sidekicks. Song Guichen continued, I've gone too far. Since Mr. Lin never sets foot in the city, someone should take care of and manage his daily necessities. Otherwise, on that lonely mountain. Before Song Guichen could finish speaking, Zhou Qiang laughed heartily and said, You don't know, Mr. Lin is so famous that there are countless people who want to visit him. If he doesn't come down the mountain, there are more people who come up to give him gifts. Besides, what? Moreover, Mr. Lin has a clever and talented disciple who often comes down the mountain to purchase daily necessities. In my opinion, on that isolated mountain, where there is no conflict with the world and abundant food and clothing, it can truly be considered a fairyland on earth. What Zhou Qiang said may not be entirely true, but it is still true. Listening to others talk about their past experiences, Song Guichen laughed inwardly and showed a hint of longing on his face. Well, I thought Mr. Lin wouldn't accept apprentices. So, I'll go apprentice another day. Zhou Qiang smiled at her and shook her head, saying, Don't daydream. Only someone like Miss Song, who is like a fairy princess, can become Mr. Lin's disciple. You, in the next life. He said this without saving any face. If it weren't for Song Guichen knowing that he was such a straightforward person, he would have been angry. However, as a passerby, when Song Guichen heard others praise him for his former self, he felt strange and puzzled, saying, What kind of person is this fairy princess Song in Brother Zhou's mouth? Zhou Qiang became unusually shy and said proudly and shyly, Miss Song is the most beautiful woman in Hangzhou. Song Guichen muttered to himself, his heart filled with laughter. She knows that her original physical appearance was not bad, but it's too exaggerated to say she's the most beautiful woman in Hangzhou, right? But seeing Zhou Qiang's face tinged with spring and her heart fluttering, Song Guichen suddenly felt guilty. Although I used to often come to towering green buildings, at that time, Zhou Qiang was just a bartender for her, and I didn't say a few more words to him. How could a young man be so nostalgic? Cough. Song Guichen coughed awkwardly, and Zhou Qiang finally came to her senses. She sighed and said, Unfortunately, Miss Song hasn't come to the Cuilou Tower for nearly 7 months and 5 days, and I don't know if she's any better. I remember it so clearly even though I haven't been here for a long time, it really touched my heart. Song Guichen felt both apologetic and somewhat amused about his previously unknown emotions. Upon hearing Zhou Qiang's words, Song Guichen regained his composure, but his face remained unchanged as he asked, Is something wrong with Miss Song? 7 months ago, she and her master came to the towering Emerald Tower in a fit of anger, and under great drunkenness, they crossed into this body, which was also occupied by its original owner, Duan Xiaochen. She insinuated and talked to Zhou Qiang in order to explain what had happened to her at the towering Green Tower that day. After a long discussion, the topic finally came back. Zhou Qiang was originally good at talking, but when he saw Song Guichen's curious baby appearance, he was even more overjoyed. In addition, he missed Miss Song so much that he wanted to find someone to confide in, so he continued to talk. You don't know, that day Miss Song came to the towering Green Tower as usual, not saying a word, not wanting any vegetables, only 2 jars of wine. I was worried and kept guarding outside the door. Song Guichen sweat on his face. This is a fool's coin. Fortunately he didn't know that the Song girl he was longing for was in his soul right now in front of him. However, Song Guichen immediately laughed at himself again. What Zhou Qiang was longing for was the beautiful Song Guichen with a beautiful skin, not his ugly appearance now. What if there is Song Guichen inside the body? Standing in front of him with a different shell, didn't he notice it at all? Master, too. My disciple has already changed, and in the past 7 months, I haven't noticed anything at all. Shaking his head to put aside these annoying thoughts, Song Guichen raised his eyebrows and smiled. Zhou Qiang, who was beside her, was so scared that she stepped back and said, "Xiao Chen, can you stop laughing? Your smile is too scary." Being called Xiao Chen by someone outside of his master, Song Guichen is clearly not used to it. However, since he has already entered this body and is no longer the Song Guichen in people's eyes, he must first accept what is in front of him. I will temporarily forget the name Song Guichen for a while. Master is right. A name is just a code name, it doesn't matter what it is called. Song Guichen thought this way, and his heart became much clearer. Sorry, brother Zhou. I laughed so ugly that I scared you. It's not that you're too ugly or scary, but rather, I always feel like you're not a little girl when you smile like that, but rather like an old man who has gone through many hardships. So. Song Guichen raised his hand to his cheek and murmured to himself, then I'll try to smile like a little girl in the future. Zhou, please continue to tell me about Miss Song that day. Zhou Qiang continued to speak endlessly. It turned out that Song Guichen had drunk too much that day, and after getting drunk, he rested in the guest room of the towering green building. Unexpectedly, when she woke up the next day, she went crazy and ran outside the towering green building, muttering, "Help," and "I dare not." The people who towered over the Cuilou knew that she was the lover of the hermit Lin Bu. Seeing this, everyone was amazed. Fortunately, the building chief had a close relationship with Lin Bu, so they sent her back to the Lonely Mountain Crane Release Hall. However, the news of Lin Bu, the only disciple of the recluse in the isolated mountain, suffering from mental illness, still spread throughout Hangzhou. People say that Lin Bu abused his disciples privately, to the point where Song Guichen was so frightened that he shouted, "Help," that day. Upon hearing this, Song Guichen was almost furious. Her reputation is small, but because of this, it has caused people to misunderstand her master, which is a big deal. This segment of Xiaochen, I don't know who he really is. He shouted for help for no reason. I woke up on the chaotic grave that day, surrounded by dead bodies without shouting for help. Qi returned to Qi, but Song Guichen had no choice but to accept this reality. He then chatted with Zhou Qiangdong and inquired about many things that had been discovered in Hangzhou over the past 6 months, and then came to the accommodation of the Zhao Cuilou miscellaneous workers. Zhou Qiang carefully explained to her the daily workflow of Shuo Cuilou and instructed her not to be lazy or run around. After that, she also went to work on her own affairs. Looking at this small but still clean and tidy room, Song Guichen couldn't help but marvel at the unpredictability of life and the manipulation of nature. Who would have thought that her only disciple, the recluse Lin Bu, would today become a kitchen maid in the towering Cuilou? Oh no, what about the kitchen maid assistant? At the end of this day, besides her, only Duan Xiaochen, who was inside her body, probably knew that she was Song Guichen. But Duan Xiaochen is unwilling. Does Song Guichen want to compromise like this, giving up her master and her original life to others, and continue to live with her current body? It's not that I can't live with my current body, it's just that everything I originally had has been taken away by someone, which makes me feel a bit reluctant. This unwillingness may not be a big deal, but it is always in my heart. Not pulling, not fast. Song Guichen washed his face with water and carefully examined the green and astringent face reflected in the water. Speaking of which, I still have a good bowel movement. This body is at least 5 years younger than before. She just picked up 5 years of good years for nothing. However, carefully glancing at the face in the water again, Song Guichen shook his head repeatedly. TSK, this little girl is so thin, hasn't her family given her food to eat? End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Flying Beads. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Flying Beads. After looking at this body for a while, Song Guichen sighed inwardly. This little Chen was also a pitiful person. Zhou Qiang said that Duan Xiaochen woke up in the towering green building that day and shouted, "Help!" Song Guichen couldn't help but wonder, what exactly did this ordinary-looking little girl, who couldn't eat enough or wear warm clothes, experience to die on the chaotic grave? No wonder Duan Xiaochen was so frightened when she saw her on the lonely mountain just now. Perhaps she was afraid of her arrival, causing her to lose her peaceful days now. Lin Bu leisurely clouds and wild cranes, indifferent to the world, indifferent to everything. As his only disciple, Song Guichen also learned some easy-going qualities. Therefore, Song Guichen did not feel that the situation at this time was too bad, nor did he really feel that there was anything wrong with Duan Xiaochen pretending not to know him. After all, people are all selfish. Song Guichen secretly said, Duan Xiaochen is young and looks like a hard-working little girl who grew up in her own body. By chance, she lived a peaceful life on a lonely mountain and was favored by her master. She couldn't bear to give up for a while, which is understandable. Anyway, I have returned to Hangzhou now and my master is also within reach. Let's settle down for now, and we will gradually figure out what will happen in the future. After thinking about his plans, Song Guichen began to tidy up the house. After all, I will be living here for the time being. Song Guichen is an extremely particular person. In the lonely mountains, although the thatched cottage was simple, she took care of the front, back, and outside of the house in an orderly manner. This room was originally relatively clean and tidy, but Song Guichen didn't spend much time tidying it up. He moved a small bookshelf on the west side to a window-facing area on the north side according to his own wishes, and prepared to place a bookshelf on the empty west side. Master once said, "It is better to eat without meat than to live without books." Song Guichen didn't really enjoy reading, but rather developed the habit of collecting books over the years. Whenever he saw new books at the bookstore, he couldn't help but buy them back. Especially when encountering ancient and modern solitary books by chance, Song Guichen insisted on getting the books, no matter how much money and effort he spent. Over the years, she has hidden many lonely books in the thatched cottage on the lonely mountain, and even made many rooms available specifically for storing books. Lin Bu once said with a smile, "The top collection of books in the world is undoubtedly a dilapidated thatched cottage on a solitary mountain." Thinking about the past, Song Guichen couldn't help but sigh again. After looking at the empty room and thinking for a moment, she came to the courtyard of the towering green building and prepared to pick a few plum blossoms as decorations. The towering green tower is not just a building, but is composed of 5 buildings. East, West, South, North, and Central. The main layout is east-west vertical, with the east building facing the street, which is the most complex. After entering the east building, you can enter the central building through the courtyard. The south and north buildings are symmetrical on the horizontal axis of the central building. The largest and tallest of the 5 buildings is the west building at the end of the vertical axis, which only receives influential figures with heads and faces. As night fell, the lights in the courtyard gradually lit up, and 5 buildings competed to shine. The lights in the courtyard below the corridor had also been completely lit up, and the towering green building was as bright as day. Now that the plum blossoms are in full bloom and the plum fragrance is serene, Song Guichen couldn't help but feel like he was still on a lonely mountain at this time. After only a moment of melancholy, Song Guichen was about to return to the house with a plum branch in his hand. However, he met a clean and agile woman in her 30s, wielding a sword, rushing towards the west building. The woman saw Song Guichen and ordered as if seeing a life-saving straw, "You, come here." Song Guichen was not sure why, so he looked left and right and saw no one on either side. Obviously, the woman was calling her. With uncertainty, Song Guichen pointed to himself and asked, "You're calling me?" "Nonsense, it's not who you call." The woman strode over, and when she saw Song Guichen's face clearly, she was slightly stunned and raised her hand to touch Song Guichen's cheek. However, before he could even touch Song Guichen's face, he heard that the pursuers behind him had already chased after him. Before she could speak, she quickly stuffed a pearl from somewhere into Song Guichen's arms and said, "This pearl, no matter what, you must personally hand it over to Lord Gu of the 2 Zhejiang provinces. Remember it." Before Song Guichen could even ask what the bead was, the woman had already wielded her sword and flew up to the eaves of the central building, disappearing from sight. Rubbing the smooth jade-like beads in his hand, Song Guichen didn't have time to take a closer look when he heard a group of guards chasing after him in a noisy manner. After meeting Song Guichen, the leader asked, "Have you seen a woman holding a sword?" "Oh, I see it." Song Guichen calmly pointed in the direction of the woman's flight. Like a wild goose, it flew up there with a whoosh sound and disappeared, but it scared me. "What kind of person are you?" "Me." Song Guichen pointed to himself again. "Nonsense, who are you?" the guard leader shouted. "Why are you strolling around in the courtyard at night?" "I am the new kitchen assistant. I have just moved into the towering green building and am preparing to pick a few flowers to decorate my room." Song Guichen said and raised the plum branch in his hand to show that he was really out picking flowers. The guard leader looked at her up and down several times, and saw that she was honest and upright. He said, "Go back, it's none of your business here." Song Guichen tightly grasped the bead in his palm and calmly returned to the room, unable to help but take a long breath. This towering Cuilou is truly the #1 restaurant in Hangzhou. On the first day of entering the towering green building, did you encounter such an exciting thing? Feeling to light the lamp, Song Guichen inserted the plum branch into the vase and placed it in front of the window. He then sat under the lamp and opened his hand, carefully examining the bead that the woman had forced on her. This is a milky yellow bead the size of a bullet, smooth and shiny, with a small round hole in it, probably used for threading ropes. Song Guichen pondered for a while, but couldn't see anything special about the bead. So he put away the bead and planned to inquire about the woman's identity tomorrow before deciding how to dispose of it. Song Guichen is not unfamiliar with the mention of Gu, a criminal in the 2 Zhejiang provinces, among women. In fact, Song Guichen and Gu Yi, the youngest son of Lord Gu, are still engaged in marriage. Lin Bu and the Gu family in Wujuan have always had a good relationship, and now it is Gu Xinyan, the son of the Gu family, who is responsible for the punishment in the 2 Zhejiang provinces. This criminal justice officer is honest and upright, jealous of evil as if it were a grudge, and oversees the judiciary and prisons of the entire Zhejiang road. He has many children under his command, and his youngest son is most favored by him, who is Gu Yi. Lin Bu has always admired Gu Yi, a young man. One time, when Gu Xinyan visited Lin Bu in Gushan, the two were overjoyed and arranged a marriage between Song Guichen and Gu Yi. Regarding Gu Yi, Song Guichen had only seen him from afar a few times before, so he couldn't be considered very familiar with him. Now, this identity is a complete stranger. Moreover, thinking of the marriage, Song Guichen couldn't help but think of another person. Lu Junyu. Thinking of Lu Jun's encounter, Song Guichen's heart couldn't help but sink. In the past 6 months, I don't know how he has been. Have you noticed that the person in her original body is not herself? This is really a headache. If it weren't for his own personal experience, Song Guichen would have made up his mind not to believe in any ghosts or gods in the world. But now that he and Duan Xiaochen have exchanged souls, what else wouldn't happen in the world? However, for an ordinary person, who could have imagined that there would be an exchange of souls? I'm afraid even if Lu Junyu felt her difference, he wouldn't think that she was no longer her. Even though he always keeps his mouth open to Amitabha Buddha, he would never have thought of the exchange of souls. Thinking about the past 7 months, when Lu Jun met Duan Xiaochen, who might have been caring about him as usual, Song Guichen's heart felt as if he had been bitten by something, suffocating and unable to catch his breath. The female supporting role is called Duan Xiaochen. Initially, she was named Luo Xiaochen, but later changed her surname to Duan for the sake of the plot. If you see any places with Luo Xiaochen, please remind me to change it. Facepalm, end of this chapter. Chapter 10. Assassin Identity. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Assassin Identity. Thinking about something, Song Guichen didn't sleep well that night. Before the hour of Mao arrived, I heard the sound of people walking outside the house. Song Guichen quickly got up, shook his face with a basin of cold water, and then came to the back kitchen of the west building of the towering Cuilou. Yesterday, Zhou Qiang was supposed to bring her to meet the cook Duan, but at that time, the cook Duan happened to personally serve the dishes and didn't see her. Today, Song Guichen arrived early in the kitchen, only to see a few miscellaneous workers carrying fresh ingredients. When he saw Song Guichen, a man with thick whiskers said. The little girl woke up quite early. Are you the new cook? Ah, yes. Song Guichen smiled sweetly, anticipating that the chefs might arrive later, and said, I only entered the towering green tower yesterday. I want to come and familiarize myself with it first, so that I can also pay my respects to the master. You don't know yet, do you? Yesterday, the cook Duan intended to assassinate Han Zhuo, but she has already been taken to the government by the Imperial Guard. If you want to find her, you probably won't be able to see her, said the bearded beard. Ah. Song Guichen couldn't help but scream out loud. She couldn't believe that the woman she saw last night was actually the famous cook Duan from the towering Cuilou. Seeing her stunned in the same place, the bearded man said, Fortunately, Han Go is blessed with good luck. I heard she was only slightly injured and won't be in any way. I heard that Han Song was injured, and Song Guichen wanted to visit her several times. However, she is now just a little girl that Han Song has taken in from the street to the Tower of Emerald. Han Song is a purchasing agent at the Tower of Emerald, so he can't just visit if he wants to. After much contemplation, Song Guichen entered the kitchen and cooked a bowl of sparkling jade pot before arriving at Han Song's residence. The bartender at the door stopped Song Guichen, saying that Han Gogo needs to rest and no one should disturb him. Song Guichen had no choice but to hand over the food box to the bartender and ask him to hand it over to Han Song. What she didn't know was that just as she turned around and walked away, the bartender immediately opened the food box and started eating big. Since last night, he has been guarding here and hasn't had breakfast yet. Taking a spoonful of jade into the pot, one's mouth immediately drips with saliva. Jiubao Linqi couldn't help but take a few more bites and closed his eyes contentedly, leaning against the corridor and sighing. He has never tasted such delicious congee since he was so old. At first glance, the congee was nothing special, just duck meat, ginger, onion and garlic. But he could clearly feel that the congee was not at the same level as the congee he had eaten before. Lin Qi, you're slacking off again. Upon hearing this, Lin Qi, who was savoring the delicious jade pot, immediately stood up straight and said, Mr. Meng. Did Han Kai-ban wake up? Not yet. Last night, after Dr. Yu took the medicine and left, Han Kai-ban continued to read the account books for half the night and only fell asleep when the chickens were crowing. The building chief didn't say anything, only glanced at the food box that Lin Chi casually placed under the corridor. Lin Chi hurriedly said, "This was sent by the little girl Han Kai took in yesterday. I thought that Han Kai's office was only assassinated, so it's better to be careful with the things at the entrance, so." Director Meng nodded slightly, and Lin Chi's consideration was indeed reasonable. However, Director Meng still frequently looked at the food box. The faint fragrance emanating from the box was too tempting, which made him curious about what was inside. Lin Chi was very insightful. Seeing the building master standing still, he could not guess his mind. He hurriedly took out the remaining half-bowl of congee from the food box and said, "This congee looks ordinary, but the entrance is excellent." As he said, he took down the upper layer of the food box, but saw 3 small plates in the middle layer, which were ingeniously placed with the dishes of congee. Director Meng couldn't help but glance carefully and said, "What is the floor below?" Upon hearing this, Lin Chi quickly took out 3 small dishes, only to find a cup of clear tea on the bottom layer of the food box. When Lin Chi-fong was drinking congee, he only thought that the congee was very delicious. Now he saw the dishes and tea on the second floor and bottom of the food box, and he was amazed. Unexpectedly, this simple congee has taken so much thought. Before he could express his admiration, he saw Director Meng pick up the chopsticks from the food box and put a small dish into his mouth. Lin Chi was stunned and stood still. The normally unsmiling building leader simply sat down on the porch of the courtyard, picked up the remaining half-bowl of congee, and ate with small dishes. When Lin Chi saw that a few small plates of small dishes were not many, they were completely eliminated by the building leader. He secretly regretted that he didn't eat more quickly just now and didn't open the bottom 2 layers of the food box to take a look. After half a bowl of congee and 3 small dishes, Mr. Meng slowly picked up the cup of home-made tea cup. The clear tea in the cup was still warm. Mr. Meng closed his eyes and placed the tea by his nose for a sniff before taking it into his mouth. Having had enough to eat and drink, Director Meng stood up and glanced into the room. Seeing that it was still quiet inside, he didn't care about Lin Chi's stunned expression and casually left with his hands down. Han Kai-ban was assassinated, and the assassin was the kitchen lady in the building. Although the kitchen lady Duan has been arrested and sent to the government, the inside and outside of the towering green building are still heavily guarded. Song Guichen is in the kitchen and has heard a lot about the cook Duan. Originally, the name of this chef Duan Ian was Duan Ian. A few years ago, when Han Kai-ban went to Beijing to handle affairs, she brought her back and immediately became the head chef of the West Building, in charge of all the affairs of the rear kitchen. I heard that she was once a palace chef who was persecuted for offending the nobles of Kaifeng Prefecture. It was Han Mai who saved her and brought her to Hangzhou. I can't believe that the cook Duan, who usually looks so kind, actually committed murder while traveling. Yeah, Han Kai-ban is still the life-saving benefactor of cook Duan. Song Guichen is young, but his hands and feet are diligent. He speaks politely and smiles with delicate eyebrows and eyes. He is friendly and lovable, and everyone likes this new little girl very much, so they are willing to talk to her. Song Guichen put the chicken wings in an oil pot and casually asked, "Is the cook Duan very kind on weekdays?" "Yes, she is very kind to our sisters. Unlike the head chef in other buildings, she often trains assistants. A few days ago, my father went up the mountain to pick herbs and broke his leg. It was still N Yang who paid for the doctor." A girl who was about the same age as Song Guichen and wore a bun said sadly, "This month's money hasn't been paid yet, and I haven't returned the silver to N Yang yet." She just. The chicken wings in the oil pot were fried until golden brown. Song Guichen held the pot in his left hand and exerted some force. All the chicken wings flipped steadily, but no drop of oil splashed out of the oil pot. Upon seeing this, the girl with a double bun showed an undisguised shock and envy in her eyes. She immediately put aside the sadness that had just been talked about by Cooking Duan and came to Song Guichen's side, saying, "Xiao Chen, you're amazing. I've been learning with Cooking Duan for so long, and I dare not flip the pot empty-handed. I'm really stupid." Everyone was amused by her blurted-out admiration and self-blame, saying, "Moon, flipping the pot is just one hand cooked. With more practice, you will naturally learn." Yu pouted and said, "But Xiao Chen is younger than me. She knows everything, but I don't know yet." Song Guichen quickly explained, "My parents have both died since I was young, and knowing how to do these things is just a last resort." End of this chapter.